whatever has happened in your life, whatever hard thing that you have encountered, whether that's childhood, whether that's through friendship drama, whatever, is like, know that God is in the business of redeeming everything.
Welcome back. Today is a great show. We are in the mental resilience series on the show. How do we bounce back? How do we get strong? You know, I am the girl that wrote Standing Strong. How do we stand up in life? How are we fortified? What do we need to take care of ourselves? What do we need from the world around us? What boundaries do we need? How do we get a little gritty? How do we build resilience? That's what we're tackling. Today, we have something really important to tackle, and we're going to start with our self-talk. How do we talk to ourselves? Not even anyone else. What's going on in our heads? We're going to dive in with the wonderful Melanie Shankle about generational trauma, about mean girls, about our relationships with parental figures. How did we learn the self-talk we're giving ourselves? And if you know Melanie at all, and you know Melanie and I together, we're going to talk about our favorite cosmetics. We have so much to share with you today. It's a really, really important episode. I'm so glad that you're here. Okay, let's dive in. Without further ado, here's my friend Melanie. One of the biggest issues when I'm working with my clients, these are women who own their businesses, executives, it is their self-talk. It is the way that they talk to themselves in their head. They beat themselves up. They are cruel to themselves. They self-sabotage with their self-talk. And I will always say to them, where did you learn this pattern of behavior? Where did this self-talk come from? And they'll go, I don't know. And then I will say, did you happen to hear this in childhood? And it almost always, sometimes it's the dad, it's almost always the mom. It is almost always a hypercritical mother. And the guilt of unwrapping the damage done by a hypercritical mother, the guilt, the confusion, just the jumble of feelings is so difficult for adult women. Tell me your story.
So I think that is my story. But I think what's so interesting is when you grow up as a kid, you don't know what's not normal, until you get older. And so I don't think I even realized the patterns of thoughts and behaviors and all of that I had just accepted as part of my normal because it's the way I had learned to cope. For me, with my mom, and I say this in the book, is she was my first mean girl. And I didn't know that at the time, but she was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't good enough, who made me feel like I was always walking on eggshells, who made me feel like my behavior was tied into her emotional well-being. If I didn't do the right things or say the right things or make her feel a certain way. And I always say my mom was the first person who told me you're such a disappointment. And so it taught me these patterns of people pleasing and trying to jump through hoops and trying to make myself into whatever I thought somebody needed me to be in a relationship, a friendship, whatever it was, as opposed to just being myself, because what I heard growing up is yourself isn't good enough.
When was your first indication that was abnormal? Because like you say, a fish doesn't know it's wet. Everyone thinks that their experience is normal, just like everyone else's.
Yeah, I think, it's funny because in high school, I think I started to notice it because I just thought it's never good enough, like no matter what I do. And I think it was so tricky in my standpoint because we were in church every Sunday. And so there was also a lot of stuff couched in that God viewed me as a disappointment, that all of my behaviors were, I think I tell this story in the book, but I'm like, I walked down an aisle to accept Jesus more times than I can even say. Like I say, Billy Graham would be like, girl, you got it. Like, you're fine. My whole mantra was I have to earn everybody's love and approval and acceptance and all of those things. So I think it was high school, but then I think really when I got to college, because I think college is when you get to maybe an emotionally mature enough age where you start to look at the world around you more instead of being so self-focused and kind of go, so my friend's relationship with her mom is different, or she doesn't feel these things. Or if I would see a girl who was really like my friend Jen, who was one of my dearest friends, and has since passed away, but she had this confidence about her when she walked in a room that I thought, what would that be like? Like almost to the point that it turned me off initially, where I was like, who is that secure about themselves? Because it was such a foreign concept to me to be so fully who you are.
So for you with your relationship with your mother, when you unpack your mom was your first mean girl, How do you navigate forgiveness,
Mhm.
truth, in a situation where I'm sure you still need a lot of boundaries?
Yeah, it's funny because I think the only way you navigate it is number one, the grace of God is I think it's the wisdom of I had to get to a place where spiritually I was growing and plugged in enough to go, I'm going to believe the things that God says about me and not the things that I've been told. I also think that at that time, God was really faithful to give me some great girlfriends who supported me and loved me exactly who I was and kind of had gone through some similar stuff. So we were able to support each other and encourage each other and build each other up. And then, at 23, I met my husband, Perry, and he was such an affirmer of this is all valid. Like the way you feel, this is what's happened. And he was able to be like, this isn't who you are. Like, just be confident in who you are and what you were created to be and your voice, and you're safe here. I can voice a dissenting opinion and it's going to be okay. So I think it's growing in all those things. My whole thing was I never want to do this with bitterness or unforgiveness in my heart,
Mm.
because at that point you're just perpetuating a cycle. So for me, it was like surrendering it too, because I think we can all look at our lives and go, here are some bad things that happened to us. Here are some injustices that happened to us at the hands of someone we love or other people or whatever. But the thing is you can't change their behavior. All I can change is how I decide to respond to it. And I mean, I'd seen it with my mom. I didn't want to live in this place of bitterness, resentment, because I'm like that. I mean, biblically, that rots your bones, and you're not going to be healthy. And what I wanted to be more than anything was healthy.
Did you go through the phase of thinking, oh, this is what's going on. Let me explain it all to mom and then she'll change? Did you go through a time where you wanted to try to change her or you thought that was possible?
I did. Yeah. And I think that's why I held on to the relationship for so long. I mean, for years from the time my eyes were really opened up to it, say if that was 18 or 19, and I didn't make the decision to completely cut her out of my life until I was 37 years old.
Mm.
So it had been a long process of maybe this is going to be the thing that's going to make her better. Maybe if I just explain that this is how I feel when she does this, she'll stop. Or maybe we can have an open conversation. And you would have these moments, and I think that's what makes it so hard, where it would feel like she understood, or maybe a light bulb came on, or something had shifted. But it was always this false temporary peace where I had learned to expect, like at some point, the other shoe was going to drop. So I couldn't ever rest in that because I knew it was not going to be a long-lived situation.
I think for so many women in dealing with a toxic relationship with their mother, I have a good friend that's going through the realization for the past 6 months that her mom is a narcissist,
Yeah.
and understanding like, oh, I can't change her. The best professional in the world can't change her. I definitely
Yeah.
can't change her. But what will slow down the process of understanding that someone is so unhealthy for us is we get scriptures confused and we go, "Ugh, I'm supposed to honor my mother, or I'm
Yeah.
supposed to honor my parents. And look, this is dishonoring. So I can't protect myself from abuse because I need to honor them." How did you make peace with that?
For me, I think it became this whole thing. And I remember it was probably within the year after I decided to cut off the relationship with my mother. And the preacher at my church, Sean Azaro, who I adore and esteem, he said, you can have reconciliation without re-entering into the relationship. And that was it. That was such a huge key for me to be like, just because I decide to set this boundary doesn't mean I'm not honoring her, because ultimately I'm almost honoring the relationship more by saying, the Lord bless you and keep you. I cannot be in a relationship with you, but I don't wish you ill will. I don't have bitterness. I could even accept, because I think as I was older, because, we grew up in like the 80s. Nobody was talking about things like bipolar or narcissism or borderline personality disorder. But I think as I got older and I was able to put language to some of her behaviors and go, oh, this is who she is. Like, this is truly a mental thing and she's not going to change. Where it's like sometimes the most honoring thing you can do is, you know what, we're going to quit being so toxic to each other and just walk away and say, you're good, I'm good, this does not work for us.
I love that. So let's talk about dragons. What
Yeah.
made you connect the idea of dragons to generational trauma and mean girl behavior? I love this.
I had heard years ago long before I ever wrote this book or knew what this book was going to be, I had heard this story, and it talked about how in medieval times, when people would set sail across the ocean to discover new lands or to trade or whatever, that they would make these maps. They would have these maps. And, we didn't have Google Maps back then. Now Apple Maps can tell us you have 3 stop signs and it's going to take you 17 minutes to get somewhere. But they didn't have time. So they would have these uncharted areas where people either hadn't explored, or maybe a boat had disappeared, or maybe someone had seen something that seemed scary or ominous. And they would mark it in Latin, "Here be dragons." And it was just their way of saying, like, hey, there may be danger up ahead. Like, tread carefully into this land because we don't really know what's here. And I loved that idea. And as I thought about generational trauma and Caroline dealing with mean girls in high school and all that, I was like, we all have dragons. As we go through life, ultimately, each of our lives could be marked, "Here be dragons," because, it's like you and I were talking about before we even started recording. Something's always going to show up. You're going to be going on your merry way and like, this is so great. And then all of a sudden, dragons. So that's really where the book came from, because here's the thing, they're scary, but they can also be defeated. And so you've got to view it like that. Like, this isn't an obstacle I can't overcome. It's just going to be an obstacle that's going to be in my way. And if I use it for good in the way God intends, it's going to build grit. It's going to build resilience. It's going to build wisdom. It's going to build discernment. And hopefully it's going to clear a path for the people coming up behind you to do better and not have to face that same dragon.
That's so good. I love that. As soon as I heard the title, I was obsessed and couldn't wait to get my hands on it. Couldn't wait to dive in. So for you as a writer, what made you wake up one day and go, I think I'm going to tell the world about my trauma from my mom and my daughter's issues, and I'm going to tackle generational trauma. Yeah, I feel totally prepared to do that. What made you make that decision to go for it?
You know what? It's kind of like we said, only Jesus could have made me make that decision. That was not anything. I kind of always knew it would be a story I would tell someday, and I used to joke and say this book that I would write about my mom, because it's not something that I've really talked about or written about anywhere. I was like, it's going to be a book called "Now That Everybody Has Died." That's when I'll write that book. And even when I signed the contract for this book, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. I had been on another podcast where I had talked some about Caroline's mean girl experience in high school. And I had gotten such a big response from so many women. And anytime if I were at a speaking event, if I ever talked about it, and sometimes I would, you know how it is. You have so many women that come up and either they've been through it, their daughters are currently going through it, they're trying to figure out how to navigate it. And so Caroline because she is an Enneagram 8, she is so gracious in, I said, "Are you okay if I tell this part of your story?" And she was like, "You can tell it all, burn it down, name names." And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not doing that." And she was joking, but she basically was like, "I'm fine with it. If it helps other girls get through it, then I'm fine with you telling my story." So I knew the book was going to have that component. I also knew it was going to talk about empty nesting, because it coincided with, at that time, her sophomore year of college. And so I'd sent my only child off to school. And so what that stage of life, I did not know the generational trauma piece. Life has a way of coming together. All of a sudden I was like, this is the time. This is the time, because these things tie in. I don't think I even realized. And really it was Sophie, my podcast partner on the Big Boocast, was the one that was like, "Hey, do you see the tie between what you've been through with your mom and what Caroline has gone through in high school?" And once she said it, I couldn't quit. I was like, oh, that's the thread. And that's how that ended up being this book.
Good old Sophie.
Yeah, listen, the English teacher, I always say, Mrs. Hudson, the English teacher, she knows. So she sees the thread. She does.
What did you learn about mean girl behavior that surprised you when you were researching the book?
I don't know that it's something that I didn't know, but I think it's when you look, first of all, I think when you look at statistics, what you see is we really do have a mean girl epidemic. And I think it's gotten so much worse with social media and all the things, because here's the difference is now you can see, number one, what you're being left out of in real time.
What a nightmare.
Oh, it's a nightmare. I'm like, back in our day, it's like maybe you would go back to school on Monday and people would be talking about the fun party they went to Friday, but you weren't having to see videos of them having a great time without you. you weren't able to see that a whole group of your friends had all gotten together and left you behind, and now you can. I think the other thing is that if you don't protect your kids, that whoever is being mean to them or toxic to them has unlimited access to them. You also, used to, somebody would have to call you on your home phone. Now they can Snapchat you, they can text you, they can DM you, they can have constant access to tear you down. So I think when you look, and I think the CDC has said, I think 3 in 5 high school girls are depressed. I think 1 in 5 are suicidal, and it's just, but I think it's these toxic behaviors. And I think the problem is you just have a lot of emotional immaturity, first of all, in these girls. And I think the root of it is as moms, what are we teaching our girls? What are we allowing them to be? Are we paying attention? Because I think we all want to think, well, it's not my kid, like my kid wouldn't do that. But it's like, are you really paying attention? Like if she's been great friends with Susie and all of a sudden Susie quit showing up at your house, why? Like what happened to Susie? Where is she? Like, are we paying attention to what our girls are doing and what we're doing? Because I think everything's gotten so ultra competitive when you look at club sports and, we're parenting on steroids, and it's different than the way our parents parented. And I think so many of us are like wanting to achieve things, or our kids are a marker for us of our own success. And so are we teaching them that their peers are their competition, as opposed to, you know what, just because you didn't make the soccer team and your best friend did, that's okay. That just means God has something else for you. We don't need to tear her down because she made the team and you didn't, or not be friends with her. It's like, can we walk in a more of an abundance mentality than a scarcity mentality of one person's success somehow means less success for us, because that's such a lie.
That's beautiful. Kind of the whole heart behind my last book, Remaining You While Raising Them, was, hey, moms, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Let's take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take care of you, everything else is going to be so much easier. But the way that we are letting social media bring us down and make us feel terrible, the way we're letting our own negative thoughts take us out, the way we're just burning ourselves out and frying ourselves to a crisp, and we wonder why we're upset all the time.
Yeah.
The way
And
we
anxious.
haven't dealt with our own generational trauma, and then the cycle goes on again with our kids.
Yeah.
It's so important. All at the same time, moms feel guilty for even thinking about their own needs.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think the thing is, and you know this because you've launched kids into the world and I've launched my child into the world, is they're gone. So it's like, if you haven't taken care of yourself, then what are you dealing with while you're also going through perimenopause, by the way, which is,
Don't get me started.
Which is the whole other cocktail of anxiety and depression. So, what are you dealing with? Because it's like, you've got to remember who you are. And I think the best gift we can give our kids is for us to be whole and healthy and to have our own identity, because then that frees them up to be whole and healthy and have their own identity that's not tied into what we want them to be. They get to be who they are.
Amen to that. Let's talk about generational trauma. How does it show up in ways that people might not even realize?
I think there's so many ways, because I think we think about things like, alcoholism or drug addiction or even mental illness. I think you think of those type of things as being handed down, but I think there can be, vanity. I think for my family, I always say this, it was one of those, and listen, do I have a drawer full of beauty products? I do. So am I totally healed? I don't know, but
hey, I just say that's my hobby.
Yeah, that's
everyone has a good hobby.
Yeah, and this is mine. So it's the whole thing of like, there could be, I think, poverty is one. I think depression is one. I think deceit is one. I think anything that you see, if there's a pattern that you look at, like, this is how my parents operated. I think not addressing things. I think complacency can be one. I think there can be all these things. If you look and go, this is how I was raised, but I want to do something better for my kids, then I think at that point you go, this was generational dysfunction. This was an unhealthy pattern that did not work. And whether that's the way your parents' marriage operated, the things that they told you, the way that they raised you. And maybe, I've seen with so many people where even as grown people, they're still trying so hard to please their parents. And to the point that they kind of almost squander their own family because they're so busy still trying to appease their parents. And you're like, no, this is a new family that God gave you. So you can honor them. But if you're still spinning as an adult to try to please your parents, then I think you have to look at that and go, that's not a healthy cycle to continue.
And I think there's so much power in just naming what the unhealthy cycles that we grew up with are,
Yeah.
because we need to be aware of them so we can stop them. My husband and I have this saying in our household, the cycle stops now.
Yeah.
So
That's
like
right.
this is the generation that
Mm-hmm.
this cycle stops with
Mm-hmm.
us. This
Yep.
cycle for my side of the family stops
Yeah.
with us. And it's great encouragement to each other. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also great to remember this is our go-to. This is what we've been programmed with since youth,
Yeah.
but it stops with us because it's so empowering.
It's so empowering. And I think that you're so right in that once you name it, because I think it gives it, number one, it loses its power when you're like, no, we've
Mhm.
identified this is what this is. And what behaviors, what did my parents do? And what decisions did they make that I can choose to make differently to hopefully have a better outcome? And I think God honors that too. When you really go to him and say, God, forgive this cycle that was perpetuated, but I want to end it. And how do I do that? And we're not going to do it perfectly. And it's not going to be easy, because I think the other thing that nobody says is when you're the one in your family who decides to stand up and say, this wasn't healthy, this isn't right, you're going to have a lot of people being like, but this is the way it's always been. This is
Yep.
the way we've always done things. So why are you trying? Why do you think you're better? Why do you think you're better than us? And it's like, it's not that I think I'm better. I just see the outcome and I want to have a different outcome.
My friend, now she's in her 40s with the
Mm-hmm.
narcissistic mother, just learned in the past year what narcissism is and is fully grasping everything. She has cut off communications after trying for
Mm-hmm.
decades to
Yeah.
have a healthy relationship. But she's constantly texted and called by her brothers to, hey, when
Mm-hmm.
are you going to end this? When are you going to make peace with mom?
Yeah.
When,
Yeah.
because mom keeps talking about this to us. When are you going to make things right? And
Mm-hmm.
her answer is, I can't make things right because I'm not going to put myself in a place of abuse. I'm not
Yeah.
going to let my daughters be
Mm-hmm.
abused by
Mm-hmm.
that behavior. So there is a lot of weird family dynamics, but the more we talk about it, the more we get things out in the open, the more we empower ourselves, the more we are encouraged by the Lord to have healthy families and have healthy boundaries. I think the more women will be strengthened to do this.
I agree. I agree. And I think that but I think you can only do it with Jesus, honestly, because I just think it is too hard. And I think you do have family members. There was a whole Instagram reel that popped up for me, and it was somebody that was like, why narcissists love the holiday season. And it's like, because I know all your family members are going to call and make you feel so guilty that you won't see me or you won't let me be with you for the holidays. And they put all the guilt is heaped on you, the person who's decided to stand up for, I'm not going to do this anymore. And you have to stand strong against that. I mean, that's like, how tight are your boundaries going to be? Because people are going to push against those boundaries. And I think the truest thing I've ever heard is normally the people in your life that most need the boundaries are the ones that are going to be the ones that push the hardest against any boundary you try to set, because they don't like it.
Amen. Unhealthy people do not like boundaries.
They do not like boundaries. No,
Mm-mm.
not a fan.
If you had to pinpoint just one universal lesson from Here Be Dragons, what would it be?
Ultimately, I think the whole story is that whatever has happened in your life, whatever hard thing that you have encountered, whether that's childhood, whether that's through friendship drama, whatever, is like, know that God is in the business of redeeming everything. Like, I just think that the whole story ultimately is a story of redemption and hope, because you can still have a healthy family, even if you didn't come from a healthy family. And you can, I look at what Caroline went through in high school and go, was it awful at the time? Yes, it was awful. But do I look at the things that God has created in her because of it, the empathy that she has, the grit that she has, the resilience that she has, all of those things she wouldn't have without those. I think that's it. And I think as parents, we pray all these things. I always laugh because, from the time Caroline was born, I always prayed that she would be strong, that she would be a leader, that she would be tough, that she would be resilient, that she would be a dragon slayer. You want this warrior is what I wanted her to be. But what you don't think about is what God has to do in their life and allow in their life for those things to be forged. Because I also would like for her to live in a little bubble where nothing ever hurts her and life is always perfect.
Same, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I think it is important for every woman who has really harsh, negative self talk, who is
Yes.
beating herself up all the time, to not be afraid to dive into where did this self talk come from? Examine your relationship with a parent right now if this is happening. Not every parent is a narcissist, not every parent is
Mm-hmm.
toxic. But if you have a parent who is highly critical of you, and
Yeah.
if every interaction ends with you feeling terrible about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
pray into that. See what
Yeah.
boundaries need to be set up. No, it's not black or white, or we're all going to cut family members off.
Yeah.
But there may be some really, really strong boundaries that need to be set up, because it is not okay to get kicked every time you interact with somebody that
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to love you. It's just not
Yeah.
okay.
No, it's not. And I think that the scary thing is, and I saw this pattern developing in my life initially, is you get so used to the way this parent is talking to you that you think it's okay to let other people in your life who talk to you that same way or make you feel that same way because it feels normal to you. And
Yeah.
it's like God has so much more where, it's like I tended to date boys that I look back and I'm like, oh, I was dating a version of my mom because
Mhm.
that's what I thought. I thought it was okay. And it took getting healthy for all of my relationships to ultimately be healthier.
Yeah. And it tends to be a parent's voice or a parental figure's voice becomes our internal monologue.
Yeah, it's so
That's where
true.
we learn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
What did
it's
you
so
learn
true.
about yourself while you wrote this book?
I think I learned a couple of things. I think I learned that I wasn't as fully healed as I thought I was when I was writing the book. I mean, I always say at 53 years old, that writing this book this past year was the year that finally sent me to therapy. Because I think when you start to unearth all of that stuff, I think I started to realize like, oh, I do still operate sometimes out of this wounded place or out of this place of feeling like I'm not enough. I do still have these habits where sometimes I can be like a trained monkey where I'm just like, whatever you need, I'll make you happy. I'm going to make it magic. And so I think that's what I learned about myself is that there were still places where I was still healing that
Mm.
and are we ever fully healed this side of heaven? I don't know. I mean, I think we're all carrying stuff because we're human. But I think I just learned that there were still places where it's been okay. And I think that's why this past year has been so hard because it's like after I turned the book in, it was like I was kind of dealing with the emotional fallout of writing the book. And so processing, where do I still not advocate for myself? Where do I still feel like I can't fully be myself? What relationships do I have that aren't really healthy in my life, but I've just allowed because they've just always been there, and where can I set some better boundaries for myself? So that's really what I learned as I wrote this book. It taught me too.
So what's a change that you made after that? How is life different now?
I think I've become, and it's funny because I am married to an Enneagram 8 and I gave birth to an Enneagram 8. I am an Enneagram 9, which is a people pleaser. But I think it's so funny because the amount of times Caroline has said to me, well, I'll be telling her some situation. She's like, look at you drawing a boundary, Mom. Look at you advocating for yourself. So it's just things like I'm not afraid, whether it's in business or in my personal life. I'm just not afraid to say, no, this is what I want. This is now, I joke with Perry, my husband. I'm like, how much of it is because I'm in menopause and so I'm just angrier than I used to be, but also to just say like, hey, this isn't the way I want things to be. I would prefer this where I advocate for myself more. And I used to think that wasn't something that I could do. I would just, when somebody told me something, I wouldn't push up against it. But now I'm okay saying this is a boundary that I have and this is how I feel. And for me, it can even be something as simple as, we used to be like, what do you want for dinner? And I'd be like, I don't know, whatever you want. And now I'm like, I don't want Chinese food, here's how I feel.
Well done.
Yeah. Listen, growing and changing.
I love it. And
So,
I love it that God put you on this journey in your 50s, because
yeah.
it's just an example. God has healing and
Mm-hmm.
joyful situations and growth for us in every decade. There's
It's
this
so
idea
true.
that we're supposed to learn everything by the time we're 25. And
Mm-mm.
we know full well we didn't know
No.
anything at
Mm-mm.
25. No.
No. And I
Mm-mm.
think that's the beauty of life is like, I want to keep growing and changing. I mean, I think that when everything gets really stagnant is when you just decide, well, this is it, but it's like, I want to continue to grow in my faith and in my relationships and in my heart, I mean, I want to continue to move forward in all those aspects. I don't want to stop.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun question time. Normally I ask a bunch of questions, but as a fellow hobbyist,
Yes.
we're going to get into some beauty products here.
Listen.
So, first category, I want you to give me something for your face, skincare.
Okay, so I recently discovered, and this is from, I don't know if you follow Whirl.
Mm-mm.
So she is a beauty influencer. And so she has helped me immensely. But she introduced me to, it's the company is the In Beauty Project. But what I started with is they have a firming and lifting daily moisturizer called Extreme Cream. And there's something about this, like when you put it on, it's like you feel it like emulsify in your fingers, like it gets real watery.
Yeah.
But the way it just hydrates your skin, because I don't know about you, but like dry skin at this age has been the bane of my existence. Like my skin's so dry. So, but this does, it looks so pretty under makeup. Like it just gives you a little bit of a glow. It's super moisturizing. And so then I've added from the same company. And here's the other thing I love about them. Their prices are so good. So then they have another product called Elastic Skin, which is this growth factor serum. And I feel like there again, it just helps with fine lines. It just kind of plumps everything up where I think we start to get, all these little cracks and crevices in our face. So to me, those are my favorite Too Faced products that I've discovered over the last year that have become like my new go-tos.
Now, are you a red light girl like me?
I do have a red light. I don't have the mask, but I have
I use a panel.
Yeah. I've got like a red light. So yes, because that's supposed to be good. And I think I'm going to start with one of my friends. I think we're going to start doing, there's like, which don't ask me how this is going to go with menopause, but there's an infrared sauna. It's called Hot Works, where you go and do like hot yoga and hot stretching and all that in an infrared sauna. So it's like you're getting all the detox. So listen, if I look 10 years younger this time next year, just know that's probably
no. Well, I'll tell you what I started using last January, and I've loved it. It's an electronic. It's called Nira, Nira, and it is like it's supposed to be as powerful as the laser you get at a Medi Spa, but you have to use it every day. It's the only one that's powerful, and you put it on each part of your face for like 3 seconds because if you do any more, it'll burn it.
Yeah.
But it stimulates collagen regrowth.
Oh.
So Nira.
Okay.
I use it every night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, your skin looks amazing. You look great.
I'm trying to keep this lifted as long as I can.
I know. Listen, aren't we all?
Collagen.
I know. It's all about the collagen. It's all about the collagen.
What about cosmetics? Give me something that you love.
It's pricey, but I think it's worth it and it lasts. I discovered probably a year ago the Armani Luminous Foundation.
Oh, I've not heard.
Oh, listen, I'm not always a foundation girl because it just can feel heavy and I don't like it. This one is it's like your skin, but better. It's just light, doesn't feel heavy on. It just smooths everything out. I don't have it on today, just in full disclosure. I did not put on makeup today, but like when I don't know, it just is beautiful. Like it's a beautiful foundation. So I love that. And then I've also discovered Merit. I love all the Merit products, and they have a bronzing balm that is like just in a little tube. And, I'm not a contour girl because I don't really know how to do it. But the way this is, it makes it really easy where you can just kind of draw it on and then, you kind of brush it. It's super easy.
Really?
Yes. Love it. So
I'm always afraid of anything because I'm so pale. You have a great skin tone. But I stay away from bronzer because I'm afraid I will look ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that's foolproof.
No, it's a good one. And it comes in different shades. So you can get like a lighter and it just gives you a little bit and you can kind of blend it out. And then they have their Flush Balm is their blush and it comes in like a little bit. It's also liquid. And so you just kind of put that on. It's really pretty. I like all the cream-based products now more than the powdery-based as I've gotten older. So those are probably my favorite in that category.
Isn't that annoying?
Oh,
we need
it's
the
so
cream
annoying.
stuff.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Okay, what about hair? What are you loving for your hair? Your hair always looks amazing.
Okay, hair. Okay, here's my biggest thing. It's Goop. It's a Gwyneth Paltrow product, but this year it's called G-Tox, and it's her scalp scrub. You can get it on Amazon, and it's it smells really good. It's really citrusy, and once a week I shampoo with that. It's like a scrub, and it's kind of grainy, but it lathers up. And so you put it in your hair, but it just rinses all. There's hard water in San Antonio, so it takes off the hard water residue. It strips it of all the products, but it's safe for color treated hair. but it just is like, I can tell like my hair growth has been better and my hair is shinier. It looks so good after like I do that, the scalp scrub. So I love that. And then I also love for just everyday washing, which really I'm only washing my hair about twice a week. But Verb has a shampoo called the Ghost, and it's their hydrating shampoo. And I love that because there again, my hair is dry. And so it's really moisturizing without weighing my hair down because it's also really fine. So those are my
I have
hair
fine
products.
hair too, fine and dry.
But yours is curly.
And curly makes it even drier.
Yeah.
There's no moisture in curly hair. I'm
Yeah.
always like, what do you need? Moisture. Let me give you more moisture.
Yeah.
I could have you on for a whole show. We could just talk beauty.
And listen,
It's so fun.
it's my hobby. So I love it. I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, a lot of products.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for talking about such an important thing. And thank you for tackling this because as a fellow author, we talked about this a little behind the scenes. Everybody's life falls apart when you publish a book. Everyone's life falls apart in one way when you write a book. So I can't imagine what you had to go through to bring this book to the world and the strength and resilience that have been built into you. But I commend you for tackling it. And thank you for sharing
Thank you, Allie. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love talking to you.
How amazing is she, right? You know I'm going to give away copies of this book. This book is fantastic. You know what to do. Tag me, tag Melanie Shankle on Instagram, on Facebook with a screenshot. You'll be entered to win. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure you like the show and leave a comment, and you will be entered. I'm going to give away 5 copies of the book this week. I am so glad you're here. I'm glad you're getting this message. If you are somebody who's hard on yourself, if your internal dialogue is critical, know that it does not have to stay that way. There's probably a reason why that's happened. If you have stressful or hurtful relationships with family members or parental figures or even your mom, you don't always have to suffer. You don't have to break relationships automatically, like I said earlier, but boundaries are good. Boundaries are healthy. I bring you these shows because I believe in you. I believe in your gifts. I believe in your future. I believe in the transformation that God wants to make in your life. That's why you're here. This week, we're talking mental resilience and emotional resilience. We're in that series. What I know to be true is that God has uniquely created you to stand strong and bring something to this world that only you can bring. So let me remind you, you're stronger than you think. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. You're braver than you feel in the hard moments. And you're doing better than your internal monologue may tell you that you're doing. And the best part is you're only getting started. You are capable of incredible things because the Spirit of God lives in you. The dreams that are in your heart aren't there by accident. God placed them there, and He's going to give you everything you need to live them out. It is my joy to get to coach you, to get to cheer you on, and remind you that with God, you have what it takes. So keep stepping up, keep showing up, and keep loving well, because you know the truth. You can't break a woman who gets her strength from God. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Oh, I'm back. I don't know what happened. Okay. I'm so close to being ready. It's ridiculous how close I am to being ready. I was born ready.